Us now in the studio. We're going to have lots of discussion and debate. Please, whether you're listening or watching, do get involved. We're joined by the Labour MP for Derby North, Catherine Atkinson, and the Conservative MP for East Grinstead and Uckfield, Mims Davies.
Hi.
Hi, welcome to you both. I'm going to start with Mims Davies from the Conservative Party. Mel Stride, your Shadow Chancellor, responded to the Chancellor's statement by saying that Rachel Reeves has tanked the economy. I mean, some people might think that's a bit rich coming from you lot.
Well, I think you've seen today that growth has been halved, and in everything she said at the dispatch box, it didn't reflect the new Employment Rights Bill as well. So that wasn't reflected in what I've seen so far. Of course, we're waiting for the impact assessments from the DWP. And of course, as we get to the turn of the new financial year, we're going to see the impact of the jobs tax, the NI hike, the impact on business rates. I know in my constituency, the reduction from 70% down to 40% means that some small businesses are seeing at least £4 or £5 grand on their business rates. This was the changed Labour Party who promised that they would be abolishing business rates and making changes. So I think it's today Labour's choices. We're nearly a year into their government. Everybody else's fault. Headwinds here, there and everywhere. But she has left such a wafer-thin headroom that anything that buffers coming alongside that halved growth is a real concern for business people out there and people worried about making ends meet.
Mims Davies, you mentioned the disability impact assessment. That report is coming out imminently. Yeah. Just so I understand the Conservatives' position, is it your fear that the cuts do not go far enough or that they go too far? Where is the Conservative Party on the need for welfare cuts and the proposed savings that the Chancellor has outlined today? Don't know where they'll fall yet. Are you worried they'll go too far or not far enough?
So I was a DWP minister for 5 years, helping the most vulnerable and supporting people to be always better off in work. Remember, this is the Labour Party who wanted to scrap UC. Remember, personal independence payments. Many people will be in work. That's an in-work and out-of-work benefit.
So you think they go too far?
So going into the election, we had a £12 billion commitment to making sure that work paid and that we protected the most vulnerable. We had consulted and engaged with the sector. Now, to get Rachel out of hot water, over the last couple of weeks, you've seen a rushed so-called reform without disabled people and vulnerable people's voices heard in this. We haven't seen the impact assessment. And what we made was really clear is that we were going to do something that turned it around to support people with health and wellbeing needs.
Back them on this.
Well, look, we were very clear that we can't have a growing welfare bill, but we must make sure we can protect the vulnerable, and that's not clear from today's statement.
OK, we're going to turn to Labour's Catherine Atkinson now, because a lot of people will be looking at what happened there in the House of Commons, and you were there sitting behind the Chancellor, and people might be a bit confused as to why there's this statement happening. At the end of it all, the Chancellor said we're going to be in the same position that we previously thought we'd be in, similar amount of headroom by the end of the forecast period, and yet all we've seen in the meantime is a whole bunch of cuts. We've cut to end in the same place that we started.
I think considering we inherited cost of living crisis, we inherited public services crumbling and our defence completely hollowed out. And what we have at the moment is minimum wage going up, breakfast clubs being rolled out, and 5 months in a row of waiting lists being brought down. So I think that it is not about cuts, it's about reform and ensuring that actually we are better funding our public services. And we certainly saw that in the budget because we got an extra £26 billion into the NHS, and that is making a real difference to people in Derby. But what I was particularly pleased about today was the increased support for our defence industry. I'm a Derby MP. We make the nuclear reactors that power our nuclear deterrent, and we were mentioned today again when it comes to absolutely backing our defence industry. And it was the previous defence secretary who said that the Conservatives had hollowed out defence. My husband served in Afghanistan. I think it is absolutely right that we're actually seeing the homes that our military live in being brought back into something habitable because they were left in an absolute disgrace. So I'm really pleased at the positive steps being taken. There is a lot of work still to do. But I think we're going in the right direction.
Of course, that's all almost incidental to the cuts that were being made today, because as was trumpeted a few weeks ago during the announcement, that money is coming out of the foreign aid budget. So the announcements that the Chancellor has made today, even though she says where some of this money is going with regard to defence,
she's been really clear, because
the announcements are about the cuts to other departments.
I think we saw what happened when you make lots and lots of unfunded tax pledges. So we have been absolutely clear where the money is coming from. And I want to see more people back into work. I think it's wrong that we kept seeing the rise of the economically inactive. And I'm really pleased that we're going to be supporting those who can work to get back into work while protecting those who absolutely can't.
OK, Catherine Atkinson, we've heard from the Conservatives, we've heard from the Labour Party. We're going to head straight to College Green to hear from Reform UK. Christopher Hope has a guest with him.
That's right, Tom, Gloria. I'm with Richard Tice, who speaks on the economy for Reform UK. What's your reaction, Richard Tice?
Delusional. This spring statement is based on delusional forecasts from the OBR. Of course, the Chancellor's not an economist. She has no views of her own. So she's totally reliant on these OBR forecasts. Let's just remember that they've halved their growth forecast. We'll end up being way lower than that this year. Already the economy is shrinking in January. Already the government is borrowing £20 billion more than the OBR forecast just 4 months ago. And all of a sudden, after this year, the OBR suddenly found, in every year thereafter, an extra 40 or 50 basis points of growth, when the Chancellor's saying world events means growth's going down. You can't have it both ways. Something doesn't add up. I think the people at the OBR, frankly, have been eating or they've been eating magic mushrooms or something, because this is delusional. It doesn't add up. We are heading towards a financial disaster carrying on like this.
They're planning, of course, on 0.4% of GDP growth from the planning reforms. Why not give her a break? It has been difficult the past few months. Ukraine, more defence spending required. Not easy, not much growth, but then all G7 countries aren't growing by a lot.
You know what? It really is quite easy. Scrap net stupid zero, save tens and tens and tens of billions of pounds by that, stop paying voluntary interest on all the printed money, save tens of billions of pounds doing that, and cut a huge amount of wasteful spending. This stuff actually is not that difficult. If you then cut daft regulations, whereas this government is imposing more regulations, that's how you create an incentive to take risk for people to invest in the private sector. That's how you make work pay. That's the difference. We know what to do because we've been round the block. We're successful business people. This Chancellor, she told us she's an economist. She's not.
You must welcome, surely, the benefit cuts, 4.8 billion. You would go further?
Look, the reality is, yes, I mean, the welfare reforms will never happen. It's been kicked into the long grass that you will never see any of this, because the last thing they want to do is bring any of these changes to a vote, because Labour MPs would not stomach it. They were very, very quiet in this spring statement. So look, all of these numbers, completely delusional. And I'm afraid we are in for a difficult time. We're in for a shock. We cannot keep spending more than we're earning, and that's what this government is doing.
Is the A word about to rear its head again? Austerity, is that where we're heading?
It's the R word, recession. We are heading towards a difficult, long, painful recession unless there is a change of course in the private sector. That's where we already are. People are laying off jobs. People are not hiring people, particularly in retail, hospitality, and in manufacturing and industry. It's a disaster zone.
But the APR forecasts less than 2% growth for the next 4 years.
But unbelievably, they've somehow magicked an increase in growth, because they were saying it was going to be 1.5% growth from next year onwards. Now, all of a sudden, it's 1.9, 1.8. Where have they found that from in a supposedly more challenging world? Something doesn't add up. And I tell you what, the OBR is going to be found out for being woeful at forecasting. But now they're literally running the government, because the Chancellor is totally reliant on their blessing, and their blessing, their forecasts are a disaster.
Why hasn't the OBR apparently forecast the Employment Rights Bill, which is the measures being brought in on companies, immediate rights for those being employed?
You better ask the boss of the OBR, and because the consequences of that Employment Rights Bill will be disastrous. I'm speaking to employers who are not hiring people, they're letting people go, they're reducing hours. Look, it's all it's all a disaster. We're heading into a difficult, bad economic place, and I'm very sad about it.
But the world is uncertain. There's problem. The defence budget's going up. It has to because of Donald Trump's withdrawal of support.
I'm not buying any of it. Can I just remind people, the economy shrank in January before President Trump took over, before any mention of tariffs. So all of that is garbage, gibberish.
So you draw a direct line back to that budget in last October.
All a consequence of the blunder budget, and she should scrap it and start again. She obviously won't, and I'm afraid it's the ordinary British working people who are paying the price of that.
Richard Tice, thank you. Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, the spokesman on the economy. We'll be hearing from other parties through the day here on College Green.
Okay, we've got about it. Thank you so much, Chris. We'll talk to you shortly. Now, before we have to take a short break, just want to ask you guys, Conservative Representative Mims and Labour's Representative Catherine Atkinson, when you see Richard Tice there, who is outperforming both of your parties in some of those polls, how scared are you? You've got about 20 seconds to tell me.
Not at all. He's,
Really?
he's a busy politician grabbing the airtime. That's what we all have to do. There's only one poll that matters at the GE, and we've a long way to go for one of them.
The idea that he wants us to still be reliant on foreign oil and gas, the only person that benefits from that, Vladimir Putin.
You're not scared at all then, Catherine? No, Labour not worried about reform?
We've got wages going up, we've got pension going up, we've got public spending going up. We are moving in the right direction, and that is what we need to show delivery.
Well, we're going to have a lot more to dive into over the course of this programme.